What's up, guys? Terry and Jim at D23 Expo. We are just out of the Disney animation panel where we saw a whole crap ton of movies.
Yes, a lot of incredible stuff. We'll get to that. But we're going to pick our 3 favorite presentations that we saw. Let's start with Ralph Breaks the Internet, Wreck-It Ralph 2.
A mouthful of a name, but
Yes.
probably my favorite of everything we saw there. So, again, we're talking about Wreck-It Ralph, but this panel went a way that I wouldn't have expected.
Exactly.
We see a work-in-progress clip of Vanellope, who is within the internet. The title gives that away.
Right.
And she goes to an Oh My Disney World, which is, very intentional corporate branding there, where she encounters all the Disney princesses.
Yes.
And in this clip, we see the Disney princesses sort of being how we expect them, all of them, like Mulan,
Yes.
Pocahontas, Moana, of course, all the
Snow
obvious
White.
ones. Yeah, like
Literally
every
all
single
of them.
Disney princess.
Yes.
And then it cuts to them basically having like a slumber party girls' night.
Yes.
And the whole scene just totally plays into the Disney princess stereotypes. Like they're
Until Vanellope shows up.
yeah,
yes.
until Vanellope shows up and she tries to convince them that she's a princess and they don't really believe her and they're trying to quiz her and they're like, we have this backstory, this happened to us, and then they go, wait. Does everyone sort of say that everything bad happens to you until a guy comes in and saves the
Yes.
day? And she goes, yeah. And they're like, oh, you are a princess.
Well, it was an incredibly charming, incredibly funny sequence because they poke fun at all the tropes of that stuff. I mean,
Just
from
incredible
bursting
from
into
Disney.
song. I know, bursting the song from the Oh My Disney stuff just being all about every Disney-owned thing.
Yeah.
I mean, Stan Lee has a cameo in it. They own Marvel, everything. But the Disney princess stuff. John Lasseter, the CCO of
Yes.
Disney Animation and Pixar, brought out on stage each one of the voice actresses. They brought all the living voice actresses
like
from
Paige O'Hara.
I mean,
all the way to Mandy Moore and Ellie Cravalho.
yeah, we had Moana there. Everybody. I mean, Ming
I
Na
was
Wen,
freaking out.
Kelly MacDonald from Brave, and they had a lot of fun with the fact that she has such a thick Scottish accent. They have one throwaway line like, "Oh, she's from another studio."
Yeah, they're like, we don't understand anything she says. She's from the other studio. Like,
Yeah.
very, very. I don't know. You saw me freaking out in my
Oh, it was
scene.
great.
I was like, all the Disney princesses.
I was
are
not
here
expecting
in
this
real
turn
life.
of events, by the way. Yeah, but it was it's a great scene, and it was a lot of fun. And there's one other thing though about this whole sequence that we haven't mentioned yet, which also makes it really fun and geeky. Star Wars. There are Star Wars cameos.
Yeah, there's C-3PO is in it.
Stormtroopers. Yeah.
And the princesses, it was Ariel and Sleeping Beauty, Aurora, are like, oh, hey, what's up, R2-D2? Oh, you know he hates that joke. What's up, BB-8? And
Yeah.
he's like, they gave me this job because they say I'm good with princesses. I miss the old, Solo days.
Yeah. He was basically there to be kind of their assistant.
It very much, to me, made Wreck-It Ralph to the MVP
Yeah.
of this presentation.
Yeah, no, it totally stole the day. Although we have 2 other things that kind of jump out at us.
Yes, we do. Do you want to take the second one?
Yeah, sure. Let's do it. Incredibles 2. We saw a sequence of little baby Jack Jack. Now, we found out in the short film that Jack Jack has superpowers, but his family doesn't know that yet. But they do in this scene.
Yeah, this is finally the scene after, 14 years, where we
Yes.
see Bob, the father,
And mind you,
find
this
out.
takes place just moments
Yeah,
after.
we
the
found
first
that out
one. Yes.
earlier from John Lasseter. But yeah, so we see in this scene a really funny sequence where Jack basically gets distracted by a raccoon.
Yes.
And then goes and tries to beat him up because he sees him stealing from the trash can. He associates that with him being a robber.
Yeah.
And all his various array of superpowers come out. He has laser eyes. He multiplies.
Yeah,
he
it's almost
turns into
it's an
elastic.
amazing array of powers because there's literally, it seems like nothing he can't do. He can
They're
do
very
fire,
much
everything.
playing around with that,
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
I mean, it makes me wonder though, all right, well, how do you work with that? I mean, there's got to be something that kind of stops him or whatever. I don't know.
So we see this scene up through Bob finally waking up. He'd fallen
Yeah.
asleep at the TV, and he comes out, and he's like, oh my God, you have superpowers, like exactly the response you imagine. And then he goes, wait, you have all these powers, and that's the
Yes.
end of the clip. And I don't
Yeah.
know if there's context before that something had happened that they couldn't quite understand, and now
Right.
he realizes it's Jack
But
Jack.
there's also too the fact that Jack can basically phase through walls. As a parent, now you can't ever keep an eye on the kid. He's going to be able to go anywhere.
Truly terrifying.
Yes.
We know that you guys are so excited for The Incredibles 2. We've waited for this movie for so long.
Yeah.
I'm really glad that the first sequences that we saw were really charming, very much in line with what we want, but also playing around with things that we didn't see the first movie do.
And they had a lot of fun too with the fashion designer Edna, and they had the little mock featurette where all these famous fashion designers were interviewed. They had models, they had Kendall Jenner was in it, like, so it was.
Well,
it
Kendall
was
Jenner's in everything.
It was kind
now
of a
at this
goofy,
point.
fun thing,
But so our third movie is one that we weren't expecting to be excited about going in. It's actually a newly announced film that doesn't have a name. It's something like, I think the name they used was like, we don't have a name for it, so we're just going to call it Pixar Suburban Fantasy Movie.
Yeah.
Was like all on a title card, and it was really funny. But so it's this suburban fantasy movie from director Dan Scanlon, and he said it's based on a personal story
Yes.
where he and his brother, their father passed away when they were very young, 1 and 3 respectively, and they never heard his voice. There were all these family movies, but it was before videos could record sound, and so the only thing that they had of their father's voice was a tape where he said like hi and bye.
Yeah.
And to them it was magical. And so he has created this again, suburban fantasy setting, basically a world where magic used to exist, but everyone was like, oh, it's too hard, so they created machines to do all the magic for them. So it's like all these fantasy creatures like gnomes, unicorns,
Right.
are basically rodents. Like it's not humans in it, but it's basically our world where there is like a mushroom house with a minivan parked
Yeah, I
in
mean,
front of it.
it kind of plays on some of the kind of fairy tale ideas and a bit of like a Zootopia vibe in terms of like, it's like our world, but there are all these fantastical things that kind of happen in there. So, I mean, it's a really fascinating conceit for a story.
And then the backdrop, like, or
it's an
the,
incredibly moving story.
yeah,
I mean,
the
it was,
story
you know,
itself is like very
a little
sincere.
teary-eyed, like him telling his story, and he showed like home movies and stuff like that. So
Yeah,
some photos.
so in this, the story is basically against this fantasy backdrop that there are these two brothers who are in the same situation where their father
Yeah.
died when they were young, and they want to go off into this, I think, mundane fantasy world
Right.
was the quote he used, and try and have one magical day with their father. And that
Yeah.
just sounds like the
It's-
most like Walt Disney
It's
story
one,
ever.
one more way of Pixar just grabbing at your heartstrings,
Yeah.
giving you the feels. I mean, I'm totally expecting the opening moments of Up yet again, some of the very emotional stuff from Inside Out. It's just, Pixar does what they can do with emotion and animation and storytelling is unlike any other studio.
Yeah, and we haven't really seen them make a world quite like this before either.
Yeah.
So those are the 3 films that charmed us the most out of this panel. You can find our full coverage of the Walt Disney Animation panel on IGN.com. So we definitely want to know what some of your favorite movies were based on our write-ups. So make sure to check those out. Come back, check out the comments here below, let us know your thoughts, and make sure to like and subscribe to IGN everywhere you want to watch.